Hello, welcome back once again. In today's video, I'll be dealing with 10 effective communication skills. So as you can see, there are various situations where we can communicate with it by using the technological devices or otherwise also in a face-to-face situation. So having understood this, let us understand the importance of communication. Communication is important because we have to share information with our colleagues, with our superiors, or with our subordinates and also with our friends. So therefore, this information that is shared should be understood by the receivers, and accordingly, the receivers have to interact. So therefore, with this expectation that the communication process has taken place, it is the necessary for the sender to reflect upon what he has communicated. So this reflection will help for the sender to be absolutely sure that he has communicated with clarity and with conviction. So it is therefore important that we do not create problems in the communication process. So the sender has to take utmost care because he is the initiator of the communication process. If there is a problem in the communication process, it could lead to chaos in the organization, it could lead to disagreement amongst people in the organization, and this would further lead to problems that could be very difficult for anybody to handle because it could lead to confusion in the minds of the receivers. So, therefore, recruiters nowadays are looking for candidates who are not only able to communicate with clarity but also negotiate and handle the customers with confidence. So, having understood the importance of communication, let us now look at 10 important or 10 effective communication skills that the sender and the receiver should keep in mind while engaging themselves in the process of communication. So, the first is listening effectively. So, listening effectively is important as the receiver concentrates on the information that is conveyed by the sender. Not only that, he removes all the distraction that could occur in the environment in the form of noise, in the form of psychological distractions, and so on. Thereby, he becomes an active listener, whereby he is involved in the process of asking questions and clarifying all his doubts that the sender is trying to communicate about a particular topic. In a way, he is also restating the information conveyed by the sender, thereby to ascertain that whatever he has understood is exactly the same that the sender is trying to communicate. So the listener not only does that, he also observes nonverbal cues that is transmitted by the sender, which can be done consciously or spontaneously at the same time. He understands the emotions of the sender and he provides suggestion accordingly. So, having said this, let us now move on to the second topic that is the most effective communication occurs when the sender communicates with clarity and communicates the information in a concise manner. So, when you communicate with clarity and concisely, you engage the audience in the process of communication. You grab the attention of the audience and you excite the audience at the same time. That is, you create a curiosity in the minds of the audience, and this curiosity will finally force the audience to be a part of the communication process. In a way, you build rapport with the audience, you will have a better understanding with the audience, and you boost the spirit of the audience in a productive manner. Then you establish a transparency with the audience, thereby actually dealing with the situation with conviction and also making the situation appear as if you are being very honest and being very open about whatever you are communicating. This results in fewer conflicts between the sender and the receiver, and it demonstrates an understanding of bonding between the sender and the receiver. So, having said this, let us now move on to the third effective communication skills. So, one is the confidence. So, when the sender is confident, he is maintaining attention of the receivers. He's able to draw the attention of the receivers. He's able to show respect to the receivers. He's able to be effective in his interactions with the receivers, and he has a clear vision. That is very clear about his purpose of communication, is very clear about what he wants to achieve, his objective is very clear, his goal is very clear, and that is what actually convinces the receivers to be a part of the communication process. He motivates others to to follow his footsteps, and this leads to the success of the organization. So, having said this, let us now move on to the fourth aspect, that is empathy. So, in empathy, I would say that when you empathize with others, that is, you tend to be a good listener, you tend to understand the feelings of others from their perspective, you are actually allowing the person to adapt himself or herself to the particular situation he or she is undergoing. So in a way, you strengthen the relationship with the other person, and you boost the creative thinking of the other person also, and you also boost your own creative thinking because you are trying to think of ways of how to tackle the problem that the other person is facing. In a way, you respond appropriately and you accept the perspectives of different people, of the other people, and that is what is very important. So if we are empathetic, we accept it, and we do not tend to come into conflict when the other person is giving his or her viewpoint. We understand the feelings of the others. Having said this, now let us move on to the fifth point, that is respect. So, when we are in the process of respecting, we encourage fairness because we respect people not because they belong to a particular category, not because they belong to a particular state, but we encourage fairness. We respect because we want, that all the people should respect us, and therefore we also respect people. We feel valued when we respect others, and when we are also respected, we feel valued. We reciprocate the same feeling with honor, and we build trust amongst the people. And this helps us to improve the teamwork, and it leads to better productivity. Having said this, let us now move on to the sixth point, that is tone of voice. So it is there is a saying, it is not what you said that matters, but it is how you said it that matters a lot. So from this we can understand that when we are using a tone of voice, we are transmitting our emotions. The emotions could be of anger, could be of discomfort, could be of pain, could be of negligence, could be of you are not interested, disinterested, and so on. So when we are using the tone of voice appropriately, we are showing our humanitarian values, and this helps in building relationships, and therefore positive environment is created, and it improves the understanding of whatever is conveyed by the sender. It leads to better productivity in the process. So, having said this, let us now move on to the seventh point, that is highlight uniqueness. As a sender, when I'm communicating, I need to highlight the uniqueness. What is my unique quality? In what way I'm different from the others? Thereby, I can at least draw the attention of the audience. I need to grab the attention of the audience, and therefore, I have to be unique in whatever I say, in whatever I do. I have to also become active listener in the process, and I expect that the other person should also become active listeners. It leads to better understanding. There's an interactive atmosphere that takes place, and it helps the audience to relate, to the particular surrounding, and it enhances bonding between the sender and the receiver. So, having said this, let us now move on to the eighth point, that is reading faces. As a presenter or as a teacher, I need to read the faces of my audience. I need to understand what are they communicating, because by reading faces, I can understand whether there is an understanding that is being taken place, whether they are responding the way I want them to respond, whether the information requires more clarity, or to the whether the information needs to be repeated so that everybody understands. So we understand the feelings of the receiver when we read the faces of the receiver. We repeat the information if required. We simplify the content if we require. We change the presentation style if you feel that the audience is not interested in the presentation style. And in a way, the audience is, through the facial expression, the audience is trying to indicate a warning or a feedback to the sender. So, having said this, let us now move on to the ninth point, that is positive body language. So, a sender should always show positive body language because we tend to communicate emotions with our body language. So, body language speaks volumes about the person. So, appropriate body language will definitely encourage the receivers to be a part of the communication process. It expresses sincerity, honesty, it shows confidence in the mind of the sender, it enhances clarity of information, it builds rapport, and this is what it is essential in the process of communication. So the last point is encouraging feedback, not only to the sender, communicate with clarity, but the sender should also encourage feedback from the receivers. Now, most of the time, feedback is considered to be a personal feedback. Okay, someone is good, someone is bad, but that is not the feedback that is expected by the sender. The sender wants a feedback in terms of the content. That is, whether the content should be dealt with in greater detail, in the sense where should the sender come back with more examples, or should the sender explain with the help of examples, or should the sender minimize the examples, or should the sender deal with some other topics that could be of interest to the receivers. So interactive atmosphere can be created when there is a feedback, appropriate feedback about the content, and we can develop the cognitive skill of the receiver when we are encouraging feedback, because they give a thought to the content and not to the person by saying good or bad. So motivation for analytical thinking definitely is essential, and it expresses the needs and requirement of the receivers. So having said this, I would like to thank you all for your patient listening.